When GM killed off the EV1 back in the early noughties, there were howls of pain and anguish from the entire electric vehicle loving world. Admittedly, it was kind of small at that point, but it created a really nasty taste in the mouth of EV advocates and owners. GM was the devil incarnate and should not be trusted. But GM is back in the game with an electric vehicle. No, it's not called the EV2, it's called the Bolt EV. And I'm driving it right now. I can tell you, it's not a bad car. So of course this isn't the first electrified vehicle we've seen since the EV1 was axed. That would be the Chevrolet Volt with a V, the range extended electric car which launched in late 2010 as a 2011 model year car. And of course if you're in Europe you'll be familiar with that vehicle by the name Vauxhall or Opel Ampera. And that car was okay. It wasn't great as an electric vehicle and it wasn't great as a gas car either. It did 25 miles of real-world range and the gas mileage was impressive when the electric motor was assisting, but then it went down to 20 or 30 if you drove it hard. And that's not done GM that much good. But the Volt sold well against the Nissan Leaf, at least initially. But then GM came out with the second generation Volt, and the second generation Volt changed things dramatically. It felt much more like a regular mainstream car. It drove more like the Prius. It felt more like the Prius, which a few years ago would have been an insult, but now it was actually a pretty good compliment. 50 miles of range, better gas mileage. All round, the second generation Volt is a better vehicle. But while the Volt's second generation was coming to market, we saw the Bolt EV, a car that GM promised would offer 230 plus miles of range, go on sale for $35,000 or less, and take on Tesla in the long-range EV marketplace. That might sound too good to be true, but actually, GM appears to have delivered on it. The Bolt EV is a car that not everyone's going to like. It's sort of somewhere between a minivan and a CUV, and it's got that high seating position. I don't want to say the word soccer mum, but there is a kind of a soccer mum feel about it. And as a parent myself, it does feel like a car that I'm going to go and pick the kids up from school or soccer practice in. Don't think for a second though that the Bolt EV is a slouch. It's got a 0 to 60 time of 6.5 seconds thanks to 150 kilowatts under the hood, 200 horsepower thereabouts, and 266 pound-feet of torque. It's got the battery pack, that's a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack located underneath the floor as you'd find in most modern electric vehicles, which does contribute to the high ride height. And interestingly, talking to the design team yesterday, I was told that the ride height of this car is actually higher than it would be if it was just a gasoline vehicle. That's because GM wants to protect that ever so expensive 60 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery from its battery partner LG Chem. Charging is 7 kilowatts on board, which gives you a recharge time of around 8 hours or so, maybe a little more. But you also have a DC quick charge option. Now, sadly or stupidly, that's a $750 additional tack-on if you buy the entry-level Bolt EV. Now, the Bolt EV starts at just under 35 grand before incentives, but if you want that entry-level model and you want DC quick charging, you're going to have to pay $750 extra. Now here we are going along a nice twisty road heading out to the coast in the Bay Area, and the Bolt EV is pretty well mannered. Now you do feel the weight of that extra battery pack, and you do feel that the weight distribution doesn't feel as perfect as it is in some other cars. You just feel that there's a little bit more body roll than you might have, but the car turns in nicely and it's got adaptive steering so that, you know, if you're careful, you could actually get some tire squeal and some really decent punching acceleration. I will say that the steering when I was driving yesterday felt very light on the front end, too light. But today, not so much. Today it feels a lot more evenly distributed and the steering does feel a little bit more responsive, and I think that's to do with the adaptive steering. Yesterday I was going around town, driving at town speeds and getting some B-roll. And so I didn't really have a chance to open the car up fully. But today the steering feels much more like it did in the Volt or any other GM car, to be honest. It's very predictable. So we're stuck at some construction at the moment, which is a great time for me to talk about some of the high-tech features that this car has. It's a fully customizable LCD display in front of you. There's a 10-inch touchscreen display in the center of the car, fully compatible with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There is, if you have the Premier version, an around view system that allows you to see all the way around the car. There is not one, but two rear view cameras, one of which pipes the vision to the center console in reverse. The other one gives you the option up here of having a permanent rear view camera in your rear view mirror instead of the usual looking behind you. Now, there are some issues with that. First of all, the rear view mirror monitor, I don't even know what to call it, is activated by this little switch here, as old-fashioned dimming mirrors used to be. And the camera and the vision quality from that is pretty good, but you have to change your focal length, because instead of looking at a reflected image, you're actually looking at a generated image on the monitor. If, like me, you are as blind as a bat, it's kind of disconcerting to have to keep changing your focal point to use it. I've used it a couple of times, and I think there would be times when I would use it, maybe at night, or if the car is full with kids and I don't want to see them, which as a parent, you know, sometimes do get to that point. But I don't think I would drive with it all the time. So the other camera, the rear-facing rear view camera that comes onto the center console when you put the car in reverse, it's not as high resolution or as clear as the one in the mirror. In fact, it's really grainy. It looks a little bit like the same kind of quality image that you get from a webcam 10, maybe even 15 years ago. Not very high definition, very difficult to make out certain objects. If it's a nice clear day and there's lots of light, you're fine. But if it's a dark day, forget it. You're just not going to get a clear vision. You might as well just look behind you. So I've talked a little bit about road holding and feel, especially on corners. I should also talk about this one pedal braking, which GM has got down really well. There are multiple drive modes. You have D for drive, and that gives you a normal amount of regen when you lift off, just barely noticeable lift off, as if you're just coasting maybe. But L is almost a little bit too severe unless you're going down a really steep mountain pass. You are going to have to feather the right foot there to get it to keep up with the speed limit, otherwise you're going to be holding up traffic behind you. But then there's this regen on demand, and GM's idea with this is that you keep your car in D most of the time. And when you come up to a section of road where you do need to have more braking, maybe where in a stick shift car you'd want to change down, or maybe in an automatic you'd want to change down as well, you hold down this paddle shift on the left-hand side of the steering wheel, and it increases the regenerative braking on accelerator liftoff. Now, for those who don't know, regenerative braking essentially turns the motor into a generator and recaptures some of your kinetic energy and puts it back in the battery as electrical power. It's all very clever, and we've seen loads of different regenerative braking concepts over the years, but this one seems to work pretty well. I don't like the regen paddle. I don't like regen on demand. I would much rather have a paddle shifter where you could choose the amount of regen and click it up and click it down, as Daimler did with the Smart for 2 ED, and as Volkswagen did on some of its early prototypes for the e-Golf. Sadly, that one didn't make it into production either. But coming around this corner now, I just dialed in a little bit of regen. But the problem with that is it feels very binary. It's very on or off. It doesn't feel as intuitive. And you can't tie that regen on demand in with what your right foot is doing. So I prefer to whack it into D mode and then just feather the throttle as you're coming down the hill. In terms of range, this car has an EPA-approved 238 miles of range. Now, for those who don't know, the EPA test cycle is pretty good these days. It's pretty accurate at representing real-world range. Now, if I'm feeling skeptical, would knock 10% off that. So just just around 200 miles achievable, I would say, in everyday use. If it's cold, your range is going to drop, however, because this car uses old-fashioned resistive heating to heat up the cabin rather than that newfangled heat pump system that a lot of cars are using. The reason that GM decided to go for an old-fashioned resistive heat system rather than a heat pump is because in super cold weather, heat pumps struggle to keep the car and its windows clear. And this is a car that's going to be sold in all 50 states, including really cold places like Montana, or Alaska, Colorado. You need to be able to see out of your window when you're driving in snow. It's helpful. The point here, though, is that in the winter, if you're using that heating system and it's gobbling up 6-7 kilowatts of energy, that is going to affect your range. So this is a car that is going to have a different range in the summer than the winter, more so than, say, the Tesla Model S or the Nissan Leaf. Now, GM has worked really hard to counteract that problem by providing you with a very nice heated steering wheel, which keeps you toasty warm, and a 3-stage heated seat system that is front and rear if you have the Premier. I think on the standard model it's just in the front. And you can set the heating to be automatic, which is a feature that we saw on the Chevrolet Volt. It basically allows the car to choose between using the car's traditional heating system and the heated seats to keep you warm and toasty at all times, but use less energy in the process. GM wanted this car to be very utilitarian, but also funky and trendy and appealing to the hipsters who live in Portland or the Silicon Valley elite. And the house that we looked at yesterday that belongs to the very first Chevrolet Bolt EV owner is probably not what you'd expect when you think of an affordable electric car. I mean, it was a $10 million self-built house, but that's not the point here. This car is supposed to be practical, and GM's worked really well to make the cabin floor flat because there's no transmission. There's no transmission tunnel, and that means that you can seat 5 adults in this vehicle reasonably well. I would note that headroom here is nice and decent. I'm about 5'9", 5'10", and I fit in here just fine. Yesterday, sitting in the back, however, I did feel a little cramped. Now, I was sat next to someone who was over 6 foot, and he was just fine, and we came to the conclusion that I have a long torso. Yeah, blame me. But if you're an adult, you should fit just fine in the back of the car. I would like to see if there are 3 child seats that could fit in here. I don't know if they could. I have a feeling they might be able to, though. And luggage space in the back. Well, it's not the biggest trunk I've ever seen, but there's a false load bay floor that you can drop down to give yourself some extra room. Or you can just use the standard load bay floor, which when you fold the 2 rear seats down, gives you a flat load bay from the back of the car to the back of the driver's seat, which is great because cars like the Nissan Leaf don't have that. Could you fit dogs in the back? No. Maybe. You could put your Shih Tzu in there just fine. Labrador? Maybe. Anything bigger, then you'd need to decide whether you're going to take the kids or the dogs. Pick the dogs. In the front, there's bucket loads of room for the driver and the front seat passenger. You don't have to get too friendly with them or anything. And the cup holders, oh my goodness, the cup holders. 20-ounce coffee just fits perfectly. Being an American car, of course, it's built to take those big gulps in Arizona and the big coffee cups in New York. Great. The other feature I really like about the driver's space is there's this lovely little cubby hole forward of the cup holders that reminds me a little bit of the deck in the Tesla Model S. It's just like a flat area that's got sides to allow you to put sunglasses, cell phones, whatever you want, throw them in and not have to worry about them, which is awesome, really. The other thing I should point out here is the seats. Now, the seats in this car feel a little better than the seats in the Volt, first generation Volt. They are a little hard, they are a little upright. They're also very thin and slim because that's one of the ways that GM has made itself saved some space. It's one of the ways that GM has saved some space for itself having these thinner seats that are super strong and comfortable. I don't know if I'd want to do 200 miles on them though. They're a little bit hard for that. So what do I think of the Chevrolet Bolt EV? Well, as always with any press launch, I've not had a huge amount of time to formulate an opinion about this car. I mean, honestly, I've only driven it for 2 hours, but so far it's promising. There are some niggles, like the fact that if you want to have the Level 3 CCS fast charging, you need to pay $750 extra if you're having the base level Bolt EV, or you need to opt for the Premier package. The wheelbase could do with being a little bit longer, and the car does feel a little bouncy on twisty, turny roads. But generally this is a well-behaved car, and if you think that this is a car designed for city use and intercity travel where you're going to be on the freeway rather than little twisty mountain passes, I think we can give GM a pass on this one. Does it live up to the EV1 name? Absolutely. This is a worthy successor to the EV1. It's a worthy successor to the Volt EV. And it's also going to be a conquest car for Chevy, because right now this is the only affordable long-range car you can buy. Okay, yes, we all know about the Model 3. We all know that Tesla has had gazillions of pre-orders. But right now, if you want to buy a car today or in the next 6 months or so that does 200 miles or more, this is your only option if your budget is less than 40 grand. But this is a car you should actually go down to your dealer and test drive if you're in one of the launch market states. If you're not in a launch market state, then you should probably consider going down and test driving it when it does become available. What about the UK? I know people are going to ask. Ironically, one of the designers of the Bolt EV is an expat Brit who now lives in South Korea. And this is a very European-styled car. It's going to sell like hotcakes in Germany and France and mainland Europe. It's not coming to the UK. Sorry, it's not happening. Could you buy one and import it to the UK? Yeah, probably. Left-hand drive. Servicing it might be a bit of a problem, and then there's the whole warranty issues. So overall, this is a promising car, but the electric vehicle world moves at blistering pace. Cars that were fantastic and top of the range just a year ago are now languishing at the bottom of the range charts. Just think about when the Nissan Leaf came out, the 2016 model year Nissan Leaf came out. It had 107 miles of EPA range and everyone cheered. It's 238. Now, we've got to bring the cost down. Can GM do it? Probably. Will it do it? Well, it depends on a whole load of things that I have no control over, like politics, demand, and how well GM sells it. And to date, GM's not really pushed its electric vehicles or its range-extended EVs, and other automakers haven't really pushed their electric vehicles. This is a joint effort to GM. You've got to sell this car as hard as you do the rest of your fleet, your trucks, your SUVs. And I'm not sure you're going to do that, which would be a shame, because I expect to see 10,000 of these within the next 2 years. Prove me right. This is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield for Transport Evolved, the beautiful Mavericks of California.